All right. Well, again, happy Mother's Day, and thanks for joining us today. Even for the adults, I think there's an interesting tie-in to mothers here, even though that wasn't the initial plan for this service. But yeah, it's good fun. Good fun to see how this all comes together. So I want to start with this kind of a refresher on the movie It's a Wonderful Life. I kind of presume that everybody has seen this movie at some point. It's been on TV for, 60, 70 years or something like that. But it's a really, well, as a kid I thought it was boring, but as an adult I really have come to appreciate it because it's a very relatable story. You know, George Bailey, the main character of it, he's despondent. Right? Life has gone wrong. He wants to throw himself off of a bridge. And the guardian angel Clarence comes to show him the difference he's made in life. The differences he's made in other people's lives, right? He saved his little brother from drowning when he was 12 years old. He prevents the local chemist from accidentally poisoning somebody by making a mistake. He bails out the family business. He helps his brother realize his goals despite the brother's promise to help him with the business. He sets up community housing. He does a lot of things that in George's eyes just aren't a big deal, but they're the right thing to do. And in the end of the movie, we get this moment where the angel Clarence shows George, here's what the life of the world would be like if you weren't here. You're feeling, George, like you're a failure. Well, let me show you what the world around you would have been like if you weren't here. Your younger brother dies of drowning. The chemist goes to jail for misconduct, for poisoning that person. Because your brother didn't survive, a whole transport troop of people die because a kamikaze plane hits them, and he was going to save them, but he's dead. So all those people died because you're not there. And this, rich financier corrupts the whole town and turns it into a place that you wouldn't be proud of. I mean, just all these just chain of effects where George gets to see what his life would be like if he wasn't there. And I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, but over the years I've thought about that, and I thought, what a gift. What an absolute gift that would be if I could see my life, or see the world, if I didn't exist. Because a lot of people, I think, struggle with this of, I don't do anything consequential. I don't do this, I don't do enough. And I think it would be really beneficial if each one of us could have that moment where the Lord shows us, this is what the world would be like if you weren't here. And I think you'd be amazed to see the amount of impact that you have. Because it's not, the big things that really matter. I mean, yeah, they matter, but it's what matters, all the little things that you do, all the friendships that you've made, the encouragement you've given, and just the attention to somebody who needed it. That matters, right? Because that's how we connect with people. It's not the things that they say, it's the way they make us feel. And so this story, George got to see how he made other people feel, and he got to see the ripple-on effect of his life. It's a beautiful moment, and I wish we would all see this, but we don't. And when we look back at our text for this week, this is something that Paul is struggling with his church in Corinth. Because everybody sees everybody else's gifts. Oh, well, this guy can do this and this person can do that. And they kind of become jealous of each other's gifts without realizing that the gifts that they have are part of what makes that community tick. George Bailey was just a banking guy, right? But for being just a money guy, he did a lot to make that community tick. And Paul's trying to say the same thing to his church people 2,000 years prior to that movie coming out, saying, look, you've got to understand your gifts. You can't all be like this one person because the community wouldn't function if you were all that way. You've all got to respect your gifts and realize that God put you here on purpose for that gift. So with that in mind, let's take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12. It's verses 1 to 27 that I've edited down a little bit, but here we go. This is what he has to say to his people. He says, now, concerning your spiritual gifts, brethren, I do not want you to be ignorant. There are diversities of gift, but the same Spirit. There are differences of ministries, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of activities, but it is the same God who works all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. For to one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit, to another the word of knowledge through the same Spirit, and to another faith by the same Spirit, and to another gifts of healings by the same Spirit. To another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another discerning spirits, to another different kind of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing each one individually as he wills. For as the body is one and has many members, but all the members of that one body, being many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we are all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we have all been made to drink into one Spirit. For in fact, the body is not one member, but many. So I don't know if you guys are kind of cluing in here. He's going into kind of like what Swedenborg would call the grand man and that kind of thing. So it's like he was, 1,700 years ahead of Swedenborg on this particular idea. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? If the whole body were an eye, where would be hearing? If the whole were hearing, where would be smelling? But now God has set the members, each one of them in the body, just as he pleased. And if they were all one member, where would the body be? Right? We can't all be eye people. We can't all be taste people. We've all got to have respect for the gifts that we've given us. But now there indeed are many members, yet one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you. Nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. No, much rather those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. Right? Really important part here, right? Those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. And those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor, and our unpresentable parts have greater modesty. But our presentable parts have no need. But God composed the body, having given greater honor to the part which lacks it, that there should be no schism in the body, but that members should have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Now you are the body of Christ, and members individually. Do you get what he's going for there? Everything's valued. And when something's out of place, the whole body suffers. And that's really what it comes down to. The whole body suffers when some part is missing, right? You lose an eye, your body suffers for that. You lose even something small like a pinky toe, and your body suffers. I actually found an article years ago, and I wish I could find it again for this talk, that this person writes about how their walking and routines changed because of the loss of a pinky toe. And you think, well, gee, it's this little tiny little toe. It shouldn't be a big deal, right? And this person goes to great length to say, actually, you know what? I've lost a lot because of losing my pinky toe. Every part of the body matters. But what I did find was an article about someone who lost their big toe. And they write about how their life has changed by losing that. And okay, the big toe is a more important part than the little toe, I get that. But in the scheme of your body, losing a big toe doesn't seem like a real big deal. But I want to read you this here because I think it really makes the point about how every piece is valuable. Every piece. And if you're feeling insignificant or invaluable, you can kind of turn to this and go, well, you know what? I have a purpose. You may not always realize it, but how your presence in something affects other people. So here's what this young woman writes. She says, first and foremost, amputation is very difficult. It's not an easy fix, and it is most often misunderstood. She had an infection and had to have this toe amputated. It's extremely painful because the nerves are suddenly severed, and yet the nerves are still remembered by the body. Phantom pains are no myth. I experienced them in excruciating detail for nearly 2 years. Still to this day, sometimes the toe that isn't there will itch, and there's nothing I can do about it. Perhaps the most difficult and unexpected problem has been with the remaining little toes on my left foot. Although the stump doesn't hurt much all these years later, my little toes are still having a difficult time adjusting to the difference in weight distribution. The big toe is meant to withstand almost the full weight of the body as you walk from heel to toe. But since my big toe is gone, that weight has shifted to my little toes when I walk. This limits my stamina tremendously. I can't walk for great distances. Running is pretty much out of the question because I can literally feel the bones in my little toes giving way. The longer I walk, the greater the strain, and if I don't pace myself, the little toe will simply snap in half. It's incredibly painful and even more frustrating. It's difficult dealing with the physical restrictions, and emotionally, it's very trying. I can't keep up with other people my age, and because my physical handicap isn't easily recognized, it can be difficult dealing with the judgments of others. I've been shot dirty looks for legally parking in a handicapped parking space, and I've been called lazy for not hiking just as much as other people my age, and you wouldn't believe the number of times I've just been told to walk it off. Apart from the 4 remaining toes, there's also been an unexpected pain in the foot itself. Just over a year ago, I began noticing intense stabbing nerve pains in my foot, radiating from the stump into my ankle. Occasionally, my foot would also cramp, causing my little toes to uncontrollably curl. After a few months of this, I noticed a dramatic change in the shape of my left foot. My arch began to shift to the point where the inner side of my foot was curving inward. Compared to my right foot, you can see how significant the curvature is. I went to a podiatrist who explained to me that the pain I was experiencing and the shift in my foot were rather common occurrences for amputees. Because part of the foot had been removed, the whole skeletal structure had changed and was readjusting. I mean, do you get the pattern here? Right? The weight distribution, the stress on the little toes, the stress on the foot, the body's readjusting. It's just all this consequence. And this is the point that I'm getting at, that everybody's life means something. Every single one of it. And if you're not here, the whole community has to readjust. Everything has to change. She writes, the first metatarsal, the bone that gives your big toe goes from your big toe towards the ankle, was collapsing into the second metatarsal, pinching the major nerves that run in between the toe. Needless to say, it's a really unpleasant feeling, and worse, nothing could be done about it. Same thing, If you're not here giving your gifts, there's not a whole lot any of the rest of us can do about it. The point here is, Paul is calling for all his believers to say, look, you've got gifts, share them. Don't try to be like everybody else. Use the gifts you've got and make sure you help others be the kind of people who give their gifts. Don't try to make everybody like you. I mean, Paul was way ahead of the whole diversity curve, and we call in this world today about, diversity this, diversity that. Well, Paul is giving us a case study in the whole concept of diversity that still honors unity. Right? You're unified in Christ, but we're also going to be diverse. You're supposed to be grounded in the idea that you're an indispensable part of the body. And while it's not stated explicitly, it's the idea that you're part of the body and that it's clearly God's intention that you belong. The individuality that we have is honored, right? Christianity isn't requiring us to be uniform. Quite the opposite. It's requiring us to not be all exactly like each other. He says it's the same way the Spirit gives gifts and chooses to each other. Swedenborg writes about this kind of stuff in terms of the grand man. And you can see it in the Secrets of Heaven 36:31, which I have in your order of service. I'm just going to read the second paragraph here. He writes, "In like manner it was shown what societies and of what quality flow into the lips, into the tongue, into the eyes, into the ears, and is also given to speak with them, and thus be fully instructed. In this way it was made evident to all who came into heaven are organs or members of the grand man, and also that heaven is never shut. But the greater its numbers, the stronger is the endeavor, the stronger the force, and the stronger the action. And further, that the heaven of the Lord is immeasurable, so immeasurable as to exceed all belief, the inhabitants of this earth being very few in comparison, and almost as a pool compared with the ocean." In that first paragraph, I guess I should bring that in here, because it talks about how it was shown to me how to the life of what societies they are and of what quality, and how they flow in and act. They constitute the province of the face and flow into the muscles of the forehead, of the cheeks, of the chin, of the neck, and what communication there is between them. And I guess the point I'm trying to show you is that in Swedenborg's concept of the grand man, every little part of the body, from the mucus in the brain that goes between things, to the muscles of the cheeks, and to the hairs of the face, every single little thing has a contribution. And that's the point I'm trying to make with these numbers from the writings, is that the new church believes that everybody has their place. And they have their place in the body. And even when you lose something that you feel like might be insignificant, you're actually losing something far more significant than you realize, even if it's just a toe that doesn't necessarily feel like the most important thing. We're not all heart and lungs people, but you know what? If all you had was heart and lungs and no bones, guess what? The whole thing would fall apart. You've got to have it all. It's there for a reason. I think as I want to wrap this up, I kind of do want to tie this into Mother's Day, because, again, this is kind of mother-like love. Paul goes into chapter 13 and he starts talking about love and how love doesn't fail, it never boasts, it doesn't do all these things. It's a common chapter used in weddings. And the reality is Paul's not talking about romantic love in that chapter. He's talking about how love sees the best in each other, and it always overlooks the bad things, and it helps other people move forward. And that, again, like I said with the kids talk, that's motherly kind of love. Mother love looks past your difficulties, looks past your the things that you don't do well, always looks for something better. And so it's a nice little tie-in there to Mother's Day. Remember the good things that you have. And remember that all those little things, that's what really makes up who you are. Just finish with this last thought, because I think in the new church we should really get this better than anybody else, that love is the little things. Because this series is focused on the gospel-centric life. And we don't see Jesus' moment on the cross as the moment. We see it's the moment that comes after a whole lifetime of suffering through temptations for us. It's this ongoing daily perfection is what really made Jesus' actions what they were. And love, particularly a mother's love, is like that. It's the daily grind. It's all those little things along the way that make the big thing. And so in the new church, we should see that as our calling too, as to get the little moments right, pass the small tests, stay in the game, focus on that. And if we keep doing that, the big things that we all kind of aspire to and hope to have, those things will come. But they'll only come if we're getting the little things right along the way. Amen.